Avinu Malkeinu, have compassion on us and on our children.
Avinu Malkeinu, kale dever b'chera v'ra'av me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, make an end to sickness, war, and famine.
Avinu Malkeinu, kale kol tsar u'mastin me'aleinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, make an end to all oppressions.
Avinu Malkeinu, kadvenu b'sefer chayim tovim.
Avinu Malkeinu, inscribe us for blessing in the book of life.
Avinu Malkeinu, chadesh aleinu shana tova.
Avinu Malkeinu, let the new year be a good year for us.
Avinu Malkeinu, maleh yadeinu b'birchatecha.
Avinu Malkeinu, fill our hands with blessing. Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Aleinu, Aleinu, Kirenu Nasi, Asayimanu, Zedana Vakaseh, Asayimanu, Zedana Vakaseh, Veroshienu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Avinu Malkeinu, Aleinu, Aleinu, Kirenu Nasi.
So next we're going to do, this is called the Shloshis Midot, the 13 attributes of mercy, and I'll explain this a little bit more later when we're not all standing, but the way it's going to work is Natalie and I will all join in to sing this together, and then you sing it 3 times. So a lot of times in this Machzor, in this prayer book, in our Reformed tradition, we kind of excise a lot of the repetition. It seems that we do this already, but there is something really special about the repetition too, and as you get louder and louder with each verse, eventually something is going to strike a chord. Sometimes you need to let something hit you a little bit, and maybe say it again, or maybe even one more time before it really ends. So please join with us. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Hanun, Erev Chayim V'Al Chesed V'Emet, Yotzer Chesed L'Chalavim, Hamzeh Olam L'Tesha V'Chatzal V'Nakeh, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Hanun, Erev Chayim V'Al Chesed V'Emet, Yotzer Chesed L'Chalavim, Hamzeh Olam L'Tesha V'Chatzal V'Nakeh, Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Hanun, Erev Chayim V'Al Chesed V'Emet, Yotzer Chesed L'Chalavim, Hamzeh Olam L'Tesha V'Chatzal V'Nakeh. Beit Yaakov, Lechu B'Nelcha Be'or Adonai. O house of Jacob, come, let us walk by the light of the Lord. Baruch Shenatan Torah V'Amo Yisrael B'Kedushato. The Shema here, Natalie and I are going to sing it once and then repeat it back to us. So.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Echad Eloheinu, Adonai Eloheinu, Kadosh V'Norah Shemo.
Different service switching over. So I wanted to try something a little bit different with the Torah service and Rosh or Devar Torah, and we'll try it out. If it works really well, we'll try it again on Yom Kippur. But I'm going to read from the Torah and do interlinear translation, so translate as I go along. And then I kind of want us to do a little bit like we do on Torah study Saturday morning, and we'll just chat about it a little bit more. So, and then at the end, if you still want my 2 cents, I'll give you a little version of my 2 cents, but it's not going to be a full-blown, 5 cents, right? So, there's got to be a better joke in there somewhere, but I could come up with it. So I would like to invite out for our first Aliyah, Pamela Dean, Jenny, and Rachel Wertzmeyer. And it was after these things that Elohim saw at Abraham, and that God tested Abraham. Vayomer Elav Abraham, Vayomer Hineni. And God said to him, Abraham, and Abraham said, Here I am. So after these things, it's kind of an unusual phrasing. It's not a phrase you see a lot. It's just stuff happened. And it's a weird way to introduce a story. But one of the things I think of doing here is to kind of show that we're going to read this story again and again. And stuff happens to us in between we hear the story on Rosh Hashanah every year, right? So imagine it's not just we're talking to Abraham, it's talking to us. Stuff happened, and then we came to Rosh Hashanah, and then we read the story again. And then stuff happened, and we're going to read it again later. So I really think it's a good opening to say that this is an all-time story. And pay attention to the phrase, here I am, because we're going to see it 3 more times. The first time, it's God talking and Abraham answering, here I am. Also, this idea of a test is troubling. If you read the Abraham saga, he already has gone through a lot for God. But I think there's another kind of test in this line, and one that's kind of more applicable to us. It's when God calls you, do you say, here I am? Like, it's a very bold response, I think, and a good intention to kind of get through the year. And also, following this next verse I'm going to read, this is the last conversation that Abraham and God have in the entire Torah. So, keep that in mind. Vayomer, Kach na et bincha, take for you your son, et yechidecha, your only one, asher ahavta, that you love, et Yitzchak, et Isaac, the lech lecha el eretz ha-Moriah, and go for yourself to the land of Moriah. V'ha'alehu sham le'olah, and sacrifice him there as a sacrifice, al ahad ha'harim asher amar alecha, on one of the mountains that I will point out to you. First grammar point, like I said, I'm kind of the grammar nerd here. It's the imperative plus a little bit of a formal. So I translated it as take please, but it's more like take, if you don't mind, if it's right. So I'm comparing this is the Torah's version of you've written voluntold. Like if okay, maybe it's, I don't know. Maybe it's the phrase. This is voluntold, right? He's taking the action, but it's starting to be a little bit of a nice way to explain it. And there's a beautiful midrash that we don't talk about enough. This is a weird roundabout way to get to Isaac's name. He goes, your son, your only one, the one you love, Isaac. Why didn't God just cut to the chase and say Isaac? There's a beautiful midrash. It's in Bereshit Rabbah, which is Genesis Rabbah, lots of rabbinic stories on Genesis. And it inserts some of the missing dialogue here. And God says, take your son. And Abraham says, I have 2 sons. Ishmael, we just learned that Ishmael was sent off into the desert. And Abraham says, I have 2 sons. Really, really beautifully points this out. He says, no, your only son. He said, well, this is where Abraham gets a little tricky. They're both only sons. Isaac is the only son of Sarah, and Ishmael is the only son of Hagar, right? So they're both only sons. And he says, no, the one you love. And this is something that I don't think we talk about enough, especially in the context of Jewish-Muslim relations, where they trace descent from Ishmael. And Ishmael is the son that he sacrificed. And God says, take the son that you love, and Abraham says, I love both my sons equally. And then God finally has to say Isaac, to really get his point across of who it is. And I really want this to be, we're going to talk a little bit later about, there are a lot of Christian, Jewish, and Muslim readings of this story, and I think we need to insert that midrash back into it. That idea of, I love all my sons equally. It's beautiful. I also want to point out from the Women's Torah commentary, Abraham never says he loves Isaac. God says he loves Isaac. Only time that's pointed out. Lech lecha, we'd also remember that in the beginning of Abraham's story a little bit, where he says, go for yourself. And again, it's also this 3-part, getting a little bit farther and farther away every time. I like to translate not go forth as go to yourself, lech lecha, go to yourself. It makes it a little bit more personal. I think we can connect to it a little bit better. V'yishcham Abraham b'boker, and Abraham got up really early in the morning. V'yachavosh et Hamorah, and he saddled his donkey. V'yikach et shnei na'arav, and he took with him 2 young men, Ito, et Yitzchak, and Isaac, Yitzchak beno, and Isaac his son. V'yikach et sei olah, and he cut down sacrifice wood. V'yakom v'yelech el hamakom asher amar lo ha'elohim. And he got up and he went to the place that God had told him about. So one of the principles of Hebrew in both biblical and modern is to be as concise as possible. So there's this quote from the West Wing where President Bartlett says, anybody in my house who uses 1 word when they could have used 10 just isn't trying hard enough. And Hebrew is the exact opposite. If you can use 1 word instead of 10, like, that's beautiful. So why didn't God just say, and Abraham took Isaac to the place? And we're going to see this a lot. There's a lot of repetition in the story. And the rabbis teach here that all these active verbs, Abraham did every single step for himself by himself. Took that action. I also just looked at it by Yaakov, by Yela, and he got up and went. It's a very, very affirmative action here. Also, as a literary device, this is a very heavy way of showing you how agonizing this is. We are going to tell you every step of this process in excruciating detail. The Torah wants you to feel this, to feel every step of the process. So, picture the scene. He gets up early in the morning because he can't sleep. He goes out and prepares the animal himself for the trip. He says, you two, young men, or just maybe servants he had around, you two come with me, and then he really looks at them. And maybe he's thinking, why can't I give him one of you two? Or maybe, which one of you is going to inherit me now? Or even, I'm going to need help getting myself home on the way back after I do this. Then while looking at Isaac, he chops the wood himself. Then he got up, sighed, knowing that there was nothing left to do to prepare, no other way that he could stall, and then he went. And that's how we can fill in some of the holes. The end of the first aliyah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tocheinu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Thank you very much. Okay, and for the next aliyah, I would like to call up. Courtney Henderson. On the third day, but he saw Abraham et Einav, and Abraham lifted up his eyes, Vayar et hamakom merachok, and he saw the place from afar. So it just says that 3 days. We have no idea what is going on in this 3-day story. Take what I did with the past scene and try to fill in some of the holes. I want to hear some thoughts. Who's thinking what during this 3-day journey here? Right. Okay. Good. We're going to get there. Very nice. One more? Any others? The donkey wants to know. There's a lot. One of my favorite things to do is taking some of these animal stories and putting them in the animal's perspective, right? I think it kind of it really highlights how weird some of the things we do are when animals are looking at us, right? So, I like that. That's really good. Very fun. Abraham el Na'ara, and Abraham said to the 2 young men with him, Shevu lechem, wait here, Po im hachamor, v'ani v'hana'ar, sit here with the donkey, and me and the young man, Nelcha ad ko, v'nishtachaveh, v'nashuvu alechem. No? Okay. And me and the young man will go onto their ish, and we will pray, and we will return to you. So point out, Abraham says he says the first person throughout. Isaac and I are going to go, and then we're going to go pray, and then we'll come back. So why is he saying this? Is he being optimistic? Is he trying not to worry everyone? I always thought of it as he was I can't tell what I'm going to go do because hopefully they might even try to stop me. Also, you should always note the language used to describe Abraham and Isaac's relationship throughout. Here, Abraham can't even begin to bear to say his name. He just says, this other young man with me, right? He's the opposite of what God did, being very specific about Yitzhak. Abraham just says, this young man, and I think he's just trying to start to distance himself. And I think this line is the most relatable for us, for our purposes today, in a weird way. The word for return is the word we use for repent as well. So we could also read this line for us of, we will go together, and we will pray, and we will repent. And I think this is a really interesting way to look at it, of inserting ourselves back into the story. First word. Vayikach Abraham et Hatzeh ha'olah, and Abraham took the sacrifice wood, Vayisam al Yitzhak beno, and he placed it on Isaac his son, Vayikach beyado, and he took in his hand et ha'esh, the fire, the et ha'ma'achelet, and the knife. Vayelchu shnehem yachdav. And they walked the two of them together. So the word knife here is fascinating. The root of it is ophel, is food. So I described this in our Torah class that I don't think was too well received, but I'm going to go with it. It was a nice idea. This knife has a name, and it's called the eater. This is not a happy knife. This is a butcher knife. We do not see this word used for knife that often in the Torah. I think it's because it is a scary, scary knife. So in the next line, Isaac, I'm going to keep referring to it as the eater, ma'achelet. This is the giant cleaver. They're really emphasizing this. Sorry, not a pretty story at this point. In the next line, Isaac is going to ask a question. I think having the wood placed on him is going to be what triggers it. It's which rightly so. You think about it. Vayomer Yitzhak, and Isaac said, El Abraham Aviv, to Abraham his father, Vayomer Aviv, and he said, Father. Vayomer, Abraham said, Hineni b'ni. Vayomer, and Isaac said, Hine ha'esh, v'ha'itzim, here's the fire and the wood, the ayeh haseh le'olah, and where's the sheep to sacrifice? So we had in the previous verse, we had the knife, the eater, and we had the fire and the wood. And I think he's too scared to mention the knife. He said, "Look at the wood, and we've got the fire, and you're holding that. What are we doing here?" You know, he can't even say you brought the eater with you, right? And this is also the second hineni of who, but this time who asks and who answers, right? Isaac asks, and then Abraham says, Hineni b'ni, my son. He steps back away from that na'ar word of young man. He reclaims him as his son again. Vayomer Abraham, Elohim yir'eh lo haseh le'olam. And Abraham said, and God will see for himself the sheep to be sacrificed b'ni, my son. Vayelchu shnehem yachdav, and they walked, the two of them together. So I want to kind of translate it as that we usually say God will see to the lamb, of like God will provide, but rather putting the wood on Isaac, this very public manner, I really hope that Abraham's saying, I want God to look at this scene. God will see for himself what is about to be sacrificed. I can't tell if this is a hint of protest or if I just want it to be. I want Abraham, who has stood up to God before, to do it one more time, just to try again to have some squeak of protest, but it might not be here. This is the second time we also hear the Yelchush Nehem Yachdav. They went the two of them together. So you can set the scene again. And we did this twice, so I really want to emphasize it. You can see the mountain off in a distance. It's going to be a long walk to get there. The Torah doesn't say that either of them talked to each other besides this conversation. This could have been in total silence. How long were they walking? What could they have said? All we know is Isaac is carrying the sacrifice wood, and Abe has one handful of fire and one hand carrying the eater. And they went the two of them together. End of the second hour. for the third aliyah, I would like to call up the board and committee members of Rosh. Almost said IHC, but that's not accurate. Close. I'm just not going to further through. Do the same. I'm going to do this again. 1, 2, 3. Baruch Adonai Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai Baruch Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech HaOlam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim Ben Atan Lanu Et Torato Baruch Adonai Noten HaTorah. Vayavohu el hamakom, and they came to the place Asher Amar Lo HaElohim, that God said to him, Vayiven Sham Abraham, and Abraham built Et HaMizbeach, the altar, Vaya'arov Et HaEtzim, and he arranged the wood, Vaya'akod Et Yitzhak, and he hog-tied Isaac, he bound him in a not pleasant manner, Beno, his son, Vayisem Oto Al HaMizbeach, and he placed him on the altar, on top of the wood. So we keep emphasizing the wood. We've said this like 5 or 6 times. He cut it and he hacked it and he put it on Isaac and he arranged it. Arranged is a very specific word. It's actually he didn't say like save it, like put it in order. He said arranged it. So like put him on a tablecloth, right? He's really done this really nicely with the wood here. And my thought is that the wood's actually a metaphor here of that he's cut something down in the prime of life in order to make a sacrifice. And Isaac is just like these trees. He's placed somewhere, arranged and bound. And maybe Abraham is trying to distance himself from really emphasizing and caring about the wood, because each step of the way, there's a line in Harry Potter and Deathly Hallows where he's walking, spoilers, where he's walking to go meet Voldemort, and he says that the dead are more real to me than the living. Right? And I think that the wood might be more real to Abraham than Isaac right now. Really stunning here. He cares so much. We're going to get into that in a little bit. Vayishlach Abraham et Yado, and Abraham sent out his hand, Vayikach et Hamachelet, and he took the knife, Lishchot et Beno, to ritually slaughter his son. Again, his son. He doesn't say Isaac, so there's still some distance here. But if you're talking about the hierarchy of what we're calling Isaac, there's young man, his son, and then his name. So it's still his son. I think he's regaining some consciousness of what he's about to do here. And Yishlach et Yado, sent his hand. These are the same words that we use with Chava, even in the Garden of Eden. She sent her hand to take from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. This is a Torah phrase meaning this is a autonomous action. He sent his hand. There was something very, very purposeful in this action. It wasn't just like lakacha, to take something. It was he sent his hand out. Vayikra elav malach Adonai, and he called to him, and an angel of God called to him, Min Hashemayim, from the heavens, Vayomer Abraham, Abraham, and the angel said, Abraham, Abraham, Vayomer Hineni, and Abraham says, Hineni, here I am, one more time. So 2 questions that are the most troublesome for me here. Why doesn't God stop him? Why send an angel? And why does the angel have to call twice? This bugs a lot of commentators. So here's some of the commentators' thoughts on this. Why didn't God stop it? God didn't stop it because he couldn't bear that it was happening. Maybe we're talking about God tested Abraham. There's a common explanation that this might be a failure. What if Abraham failed the test and he was supposed to protest more? And why did the angel call twice? One explanation is it wasn't just to Abraham, but it was to Abraham and all of his descendants. So the first